I'm not used to speaking to more than fills my branch room. It is a wonderful sight. It's also a terrifying sight. I've come on behalf of the signalmen because they don't have the right to speak because they've been in dispute. We've had 2 weeks before and after Christmas because of the imposition of rosters on the signalling staff. And the emphasis is on imposition rather than the rosters. Workers have got the right, and we fought hard for this, to choose what working pattern you take. And they sensibly took a pattern that gives a good work-life balance. But somewhere, when the local representative in that meets the bigger picture of the route director, he says, I've got a bottom line to chase, and you're having the roster that we want. Now, these are not particularly militant workers, but that's too much. So there was only one place to go, and that was to the picket line. But even then, that wasn't easy, because we've got to go through the anti-trade union legislation, we've got to do the ballots, we've got to get the names right, we've got to say which signal box we can ballot and we can't ballot that one. However, when it comes to the dispute, and it's a local dispute, management said we're bringing in managers from all over the country. It no longer applies to the management side. Shame on you, Labour Party. Why haven't you dealt with it? I'm here to say thank you to the network of people that supported our signallers. It's as simple as that. That's what they come and ask me to do. And I'm going to end on that, but I'd just like to say that as far as the struggle was concerned, I saw a cartoon sometime back, I'm not sure where, and it was a ladder, and at the top of the ladder was this fat capitalist, and then someone else was some middle class or bourgeoisie or whatever, and at the bottom of the ladder was the workers, or the working class, and they were up to here in water. And the capitalists at the top were saying, look, in these hard times, I think we've all got to step down a round. The struggle is not over. The struggle is just starting. Because now I think we're going to go to a national ballot of all network rail staff.
We have instances of people who, 1 minute, like me, are up on platforms, are speaking, are outside picketing with workers, are campaigning, coming to our pensioners' parliament, and then the next year struck down perhaps by some heart attack or something of this sort, find themselves in a position where they have to go into social care. If they've got a house, they lose it because they have to pay for this social care. And the sort of level of care is absolutely atrocious. We've got case after case coming into the National Pensioners Convention office of people who are suffering from terrible bed sores, life-threatening bed sores, malnutrition and other things. We in the NPC support every set of workers who are campaigning for the pension that they paid in for. Don't get me wrong, we support all of those campaigns, from Jitsu and all of the others. But what we're saying is, unless we now turn our attention to the state pension over the whole of the movement, then we will actually be letting down people who are in the trade unions today. Because even with the low level of the state pension, it still overall forms 60% of what average pensioners receive in their packet. So therefore, we fight for that. Now, when we got together the trade unions to support us in the campaigns which we had during 2008, we set up a campaign committee or a steering committee, and it was a representative from most of the big unions were on that committee. During 2009, we had regular meetings, and we put to them the possibility of having a mass demonstration in London in defence of the welfare state and public services, to allow every single campaign, whether it's in defence of a hospital ward or an A&E department, whether it's in defence of a swimming baths or something, anything, every small campaign, every large campaign, everything in defence of jobs, services, the welfare state, pensions, to come together in such a demonstration. And so we're asking for a very, very big turnout on the 10th of April for this demonstration. I think it is a timely event following this great conference today. Thank you.
solidarity from an unusual source. Solidarity from the Sodexo cleaners at Barnstable North Devon Health Trust. Who won their strike hands down recently against the non-payment of Agenda for Change monies. And I'd love to assure this conference that it had absolutely nothing at all to do with the visit of Dave Prentice on the day of the march. Hello from the Plymouth CWU, who in the last year have had an unofficial strike in West Park Delivery Office to get their sacked rep back to work, 100% victorious, and had one of 3 sit-ins and occupations. One of 3 sit-ins or occupations against management bullying over trying to force us out during the snow or force us back again, I'm not quite sure which, all of which failed. Now, whether a sit-in against being forced to go out in 4 foot of snow is illegal or not, all I'm saying is the class struggle is alive and well in the CW in Royal Mail. Every 10 years we usually have a 50-page messy document which probably me and Merlin and other posties here would call a sellout, but we ain't going to be smashed. And at a local level where we're strong, we will carry on giving the lead, exercising illegal solidarity and illegal strike action where necessary. And that ain't a prediction, that's a promise.
When we finally got the national strikes, which were caused by London having up to 3 weeks of strike action over a period of months, we finally forced the National Union to actually call a national ballot and get national strike action. On the first day of that national strike, I was down the picket line at some stupid hour in the morning, and these students showed up with cakes. They stayed up all night to bake cakes for us. By the end of that day on the picket line, we had got more food than we knew what to do with. Now that didn't happen in 2007, it happened last year. It actually took a long argument in London for me to win the argument that we need to actually start setting up support groups for us. After 7 weeks on strike, we needed the money. But it took a long time, but on Camden Trades Council, we started doing it, other trades councils started doing it, and actually people started doing the collections again and relearning traditions that most people outside the radical left, I think, have lost.
Every single time we have a trade union election, we must ask that person, are you willing to break the anti-union laws? Are you willing not to hide behind your workers to break the anti-union laws? Are you willing to actually stand and put it in writing that you're going to break the anti-union laws? We had a 2-hour debate in the National Shop Stewards Network about whether to come here. And I'm glad I did. And I will be reporting back on the basis that there seems to be a genuine desire here for a broad-based united front of all sorts of working class organisations, that nobody is treading on each other's toes. But you know, whoever is going to be on this committee, please be extremely careful and courteous not to tread on the toes of a trade council, because there are some brilliant trade councils who do the solidarity work in their area. There are some brilliant local National Shop Stewards Network branches who do the same, and there's some regional organisations as well of the NSSN, and we are in the business of solidarity, so let's not tread on each other's toes. And we've been here before a few years ago with the Organisation for Fighting Unions, and I'm not saying that I've changed my mind, okay, because of the numbers here. I'm saying I've changed my mind because of the assurances. But there's a job to be done, as a combined working class, and not any part of that working class is dominated by one part of the left.
We're currently facing a massive attack. It's about what's called the Civil Service Compensation Scheme, which sounds very bureaucratic, but what it is our entitlement to redundancy pay if we're made redundant or take voluntary redundancy or compulsory, and it's going to absolutely slash what our members would get if they were made redundant. And what that means is that they can get rid of us much, much more cheaply, and they can privatise us much, much more cheaply. On Thursday, the NEC agreed unanimously to commence a ballot for industrial action, and that ballot starts this Thursday. We're going to talk about a whole series of strikes if we're going to win, which we can do, and it will be over 200,000 members, not just across the whole of the civil service, but public bodies, museums, galleries, the National Gallery, the British Museum, the British Library, Health and Safety Executive, ACAS, brilliant, ACAS out on strike. They've got a very good little branch there.
at the British Library, which is where I work. We've got over 140 people crammed into a room. Now, normally, you'd be hard-pressed to get even 30 people to come to an AGM. So you can imagine, you know, the strength and breadth of feeling that there was, you know, with regards to this.
They're threatening to flog off the whole of the land registry to private companies to make a profit. They've just announced 130 tax offices to be closed when the amount of uncollected tax now runs to billions. It's just sick. And it's not just the civil service and central government, because Gordon Brown at the TUC last year announced with pride the cuts to our redundancy scheme and said he then intended to roll it out across the rest of the public service.